6, 7. How many of you ever had to get up and make a speech about your experiences now? 1, Jim. How many were living during the World War II? Well, I was trying to sort out how many kids we have here. You know, it's a little scary when you have to get up in front of people. I don't care how many times you've been up in front of people. So I thought I might think of what would give you some encouragement. I remember my mother taught me, now lay me down to sleep. You know, I pray the Lord my soul to keep, and I thought that wouldn't be too appropriate up here. So I came out with this. Now I stand to tell my story, how the U.S. forces in all their glory fought the Japs in the West Pacific hand to hand by the infantry, to be specific. Now if I should faint before it's ended, I pray the Lord I'm not offended. Sit down, so I won't fall over if I do. Well, I was in the infantry, the real Army, as Gene can tell you. 33rd Infantry Division, Company A 132. I was inducted in Chicago in 1941 on April the 30th. And that's quite an experience if you stop to think about it. We boarded a train at Westville. I don't know why we had to go to Westville, but it was way early in the morning. I don't know, it seemed like it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And there, little old me got on the train, and several other guys on there, of course. And you can see what a time it is for parent and child. The parent sees his child going off and thinking of all the problems that might occur and might even lose his life. Of course, the war was not declared yet with the Japanese. And you've heard stories about what happens up at the induction center, and it's true. First, they just take all your clothes off. And then you run around from room to room and doctor to doctor. This guy's an ear doctor, and you check your ears. This guy's a heart doctor, and so forth and so on. And finally you get finished. And then they decide whether or not you're fit to serve. Well, we left there and went by train to Camp Forest, Tennessee. Now, Camp Forest, Tennessee was in a little town of Tullahoma, about halfway between Nashville and Chattanooga. You can imagine, here in this camp were hundreds and hundreds and thousands of young men from all parts of the area around here, different types of families they came from, different personalities. How do you think they're going to control all that group? Well, I think the emphasis was on discipline. And that's the thing that's pounded into our head from the very start, and especially so it's necessary for infantrymen, because when you're told to do something, you have to do it and ask questions later. So it was yes sir, no sir, stand at attention, salute, and all that sort of thing, and you learn to respect your superiors. I think the children of today would do well to do that. We've sort of lost that in this country, but in the service, you certainly learn to respect your superiors. And a commissioned officer walks by, if you meet him, you salute him. If he stops to talk to you, you come to attention, and as he tells you to be at ease, and that's the way it goes. And if you were in the barracks and an officer came in, the very first guy to see him would call attention. Everybody comes to attention no matter what you're doing. You drop everything and see what he wants. Well, we learn to obey orders immediately without question, because you can see how necessary that is. If we are in combat and somebody tells me to do something, my life may depend upon it if I act now, rather than say, well, how's come? What do you want me to do this for? And so forth and so on. We learn to care for ourselves, take care of our own bed, make our bed, take care of our clothes, our body, especially our feet, and police the area. We used to, every morning, police the area. You know what that is? The Army guys do. You walk around all over the area, you pick up every little thing, every match, every cigarette butt, every piece of paper, everything. So you keep the area clean. We call that policing the area. And then how do you think you're going to move all of these people here or there without being a lot of confusion? Well, we learned how to march, and it's called close order drill. So you have a person out here who's telling you what to do, and you go straight, and he tells you when to turn right, turn left, stop, or run, or whatnot. So you learn all of those things. Of course, the primary thing is to learn your weapon, how to tear it down from all little pieces and clean it, and go to the firing range and fire the weapon, so you know how to, in our case, it was a rifle. I'll never forget, those things kick, and I mean they kick. We used to have to put, when we go to the firing range for all day long, and fire, you'd have to take a big old bath towel and hold up here, you'd be all black and blue. I'll never forget one kid, I don't know what happened, but he must have had his hand up here and he'd come back and he just bloodied his nose all the time. Had a heck of a time. Then we had tactical training. And then the big training session came. We had 2 months down in Arkansas and Louisiana, maneuvers. And that was necessary, and it did a lot of good because it taught us how to go from place to place. It taught the transportation outfit how to get trucks there if we had to go a long distance, and the kitchen how to move their pots and pans and tear down their tent and put it up again and cook for us. So we were all over Arkansas and Louisiana, and we got back to Camp Forest in the first part of October. Well, they were kind enough to us to give us a 10-day furlough. It was a 15-day furlough we got. It was over Armistice Day. Well, you might know what happened very shortly after that. I was in a movie one Sunday evening, and when we came out, all the news of Pearl Harbor. The Japs had bombed Pearl Harbor. We're going to be talking this map right up there. Is Hawaii. We're going to talk about a lot of things on this map after a while. So that kind of put a scare in us, and we knew that because we were one of the first ones inducted, we would probably be one of the first ones to go. And that was true. But they did give us a 10-day furlough to go home, and I suppose to take all the XX baggage home that we'd been in the barracks there and accumulated, and to say goodbye to everybody. And then we came back to Camp Forest. And then we were not up to full strength. So I was in Company A132, and we had 129, 130, and 131. So they took some men from Company A129 and Company A130, and they came to our outfit, and we were at full strength. So we got on a train, and we went along the eastern coast, all the way up through the Carolinas, up to Jersey City. Well, first we stopped off at Pennsylvania, at a campground where an outfit had just left, and we sort of regrouped there and got some more supplies, and then we came over to Jersey City, and we got on the ship. This was about January 21st, somewhere along in there, and it was the USS Cristobal. It was a converted passenger freighter ship, and they took out all the fancy stuff, and in the dining room and ballroom, whatever you call it, they built bunks. You can see one of these newspapers here shows how they did it. We just walked down through there, and the bunks were 3 high, and they jammed us all in there so they could get more aboard, of course. We went down the East Coast, down to the Panama Canal. We stopped off at Colon, stayed there all day, and man, it was hot there. Here's the equator right here, and here's the Panama Canal. And we had on our wool uniforms. See, we came right out of the winter, and everywhere out in the sun, sweating. Well, we stayed there all day, and then that night we went through the canal. Well, we all stayed up and watched. You know, it's quite a treat to see us go through the canal. But, you know, you go through the canal, and then you come to a lake. Well, when we came to the lake, it was real lake, nothing entertaining about going across the lake. So we all went to bed, and the next morning we were on the other side of Balboa. Well, we didn't waste much time, and we took off on our voyage. and headed west. That's all we knew, because here the Japs coming down so fast, Japan right here, they had already come clear down in here, all around here, taking all these islands, and down and had part of New Guinea, and were threatening Australia right there. So they headed us west. We didn't know exactly where we were going, but after a while they came out and said, well, we're going to go to New Caledonia. This little place right here. It's an island, New Caledonia, just east of Australia. So we had maps, and they started talking about the island and all about it. And then they changed their mind and said, no, we're not going to New Caledonia, we're going to Australia. Well, what had happened, and Japs were coming down so fast, they didn't want to shove us in here at this time, plan on it, because the Japanese might be there before we got there. And we weren't prepared to make an invasion. We weren't that type of force. Anyway, this was quite a voyage. It took us 26 days from here to here. Now, it wasn't long until we passed the equator. And we had a big do on the equator. When we passed that, they had a celebration, and I don't know, I couldn't find it. I wanted to bring you my certificate to show that I had passed much over the equator. But anyway, I'll tell you something about this ship. They couldn't make enough good drinking water for us, or good soft water, I should say. So our showers were in salt water. Did you ever try to take a salt water shower? They gave us a special kind of soap that was supposed to work, but it didn't work very well. Anyway, that's what we had, saltwater showers. We were in these bunks when we slept, and we went down. We had to go out on the deck and down, and I don't know, a deck or two to eat. That's where we ate every day. And we had some training exercises, but a lot of times we were just able to sit out on the deck, and it was warm, and we'd watch the dolphins chase us, you know how they do. So it was quite a trip. Now, we were in a convoy, several troop ships, and also Navy escort, destroyers and cruisers, quite a gang of us. Now, that's why I suppose it took so long, because we couldn't go any faster than the slowest ship, naturally, and then we kind of go like this, you know how you go. Well, several times they were throwing over depth charges to, I suppose they sighted Japanese subs. But anyway, it was uneventful. We ran into storms on the way, but our worst was when we got over here in this Tasmanian Sea, which is noted for rough weather. And I mean, it was rough. That thing would nose into waves, and the water would come clear back to the bridge. Nobody could go out on the deck naturally. You'd be washed overboard. It was terrible. People got sick, and I had to serve on guard duty one time, and the chair I was sitting in, it was concrete floor, and that thing would slide even. It was so terrible. Anyway, we got into Melbourne, one of the largest cities in Australia. Melbourne and Sydney up here is the other large one. Melbourne's way down here. And, of course, I think you see on one of these papers that said something about the Yanks are coming, and the Australians were happy because naturally the Japs are down here almost right on them, and they wanted some help. So we got there and unloaded, went out to a park, stayed all night in our tents, and the next morning we got on a train and we went 80 miles west to, you see here on the mark, a little town, Ballarat. 40,000 people, just like Danville. And we got out there, and all the time we were there, they were shuffling our cargo on these ships that we left, and they didn't have anything to do for us to do, so we went out there, and they put us in private homes. We were in for 1 week. Another guy and I was in a home. The name was Peg and Cecil Ward, W-A-R-D. And they treated us like kings. They were very nice people. That first morning, she served us breakfast in bed. She came in there with a tray in bed. So they were just delightful people. We noticed that they were very humble and didn't have much, although the home was brick. But they were about 20 years behind us. She cooked on an old cook stove and a big old oven of some kind, sort of built in like you would see in pioneer days. She had a little one-burner hot plate I suppose she used in the summertime, the outside toilet, and a bathtub with a big old copper thing with a one spigot coming out of the wall. And if you pull the plug, the water just went out through the wall and emptied on the ground and ran down to the gutter. That's what everybody did. Water ran down the gutter, so you didn't have sewage. We had to get the water in a little pan, and of course you dump that out. But we stayed there a week, and when we left, she had an old flat iron she heated on the stove. She didn't even have electric iron. So this Elmer and I, Kirschbaum's his name, and we bought her an electric iron. You know, it didn't cost much, and we gave it to her. I don't know, I know she would appreciate it. So then we went back to Melbourne, 80 miles back on a train, and got on a different ship. We left our nice ship and got on an old, neither was so nice, the J.W. McAndrew. And we took off, let's see, I've got these notes so I can tell you what. We left there on the 6th of March. Now, it's up to March now. I don't know whether I told you we got to New Caledonia. It was the very last day of, the 26th day of, Australia. The 26th day of February, almost March. Now we're going to finally get to New Caledonia, which is a little island right here, right east of Australia. Of course, we came from down here, up here. New Caledonia was a French island. Originally, they'd sent all their criminals there, but at this time there wasn't use for that. French was the language. It was 250 miles long, 50 miles wide. Had beautiful mountain streams, coconut groves along the coast, and some inland a little bit, where there was a valley, and there was a lot of grassy knolls, just up and down, and it had cattle, a lot of cattle there. But the worst thing about it was the mosquitoes. They were frightful. I'm telling you, you know what mosquitoes are. I believe that if you were unprotected out at night, you just die. That's all. We had to sleep under mosquito nets, and when you went to bed at night, of course we were in tents then, you would get in real quick, and then you'd put the netting down, and then you'd kill everything that got in with you, and then you could make it. Of course, you'd hear a buzz around, and we used to play games. We'd let one land, and we'd just sit there and watch it till sometimes they'd blow up. They would suck in so much blood they just popped. Well, we had, first thing we did, when we got to New Caledonia, the ships had to, dock way out, anchor way out, no docks. The water was too shallow, and they brought all that supplies in by boats, flat boats. I think you can see one of these pictures here, how they did. You can see these later on. Well, we worked for 1 week unloading that ship, and we packed that stuff sky high, 12-hour ships. We'd work 12 hours, and then we'd go home and sleep, and the other bunch would come for 12 hours. So after about a week, we had all the supplies on the beach. Of course, they wanted to get it unloaded as quick as possible and get those ships out of there. It might be bombed or something. So then we moved on up the island 2 or 3 times before our platoon. Now, a platoon, if you know anything about it, a company has 4 platoons. A platoon is about 60 people, 4 squads, where the second lieutenant has a platoon leader. Our platoon went to a beautiful coconut grove, back off from the coast about 12 miles, and a stream ran right through it, deep water, crystal clear, had plenty of water to wash clothes, take a bath, and there was a spring, and you can see what ingenuity people have. Had one old guy who was a carpenter, so he got a crew together, and they cut bamboo and cut it in half and hollowed out the seams, and they made a trough. And they went up, I don't know how far they went, I forget now, it seems like it was 100 or 200 feet to that spring, and they piped that water right down to our kitchen was. So we had running water, and they also built some tables out of bamboo, so we had at least a place to put our mess kit when we had to eat. Well, we stayed there for quite some time, and by that time, I started out as a private, naturally, and I forget, was it $21 a month we got? I think that's what it was. Now, that was a big pay, $21 a month. Well, I was made corporal, and then I think went to 54 when you were corporal. And when I left, I was a staff sergeant, and then I was made staff sergeant, platoon sergeant, which is second command to the platoon leader. I forget, I think maybe by now I was making $100 or so a month. I'm not sure. I tell you what we recall. I mentioned that when we left, well, I'll say it this way. I was with the 33rd Division. It included 4 infantry regiments. We were one of them, 132. They decided to streamline the divisions, not make them smaller so they could move them faster. So they pulled our regiment out of the 33rd Division, our 132 Infantry Regiment, and we joined up with 164 from South Dakota and 182 from Massachusetts, made up a new division. Well, we had no number, but when we got over there, they had to identify us some way, so we were called the Americal Division, from America and Caledonia. So we were the Americal Division. So if you ever run across that name, you know that's our outfit. Anyway, that's who we were. Well, there was a shortage of officers at this time, so the captain, not my outfit, picked me for an interview, and I had to go down to Nemea, which is a town, city at the south end of New Caledonia, which is the capital. I had to go down there and be interviewed by some big shots, and I was chosen to go to officer candidate school because they needed more second lieutenants. So I left my outfit and went there for about 2 weeks of intensive orientation, classes and tests and all that sort of thing. And then we were put out, supposedly, to be put out for 30 days with a strange outfit. You know, just like a doctor is an intern. Well, that's the way we were handled. And we went out to an outfit, and we were doing the job of a second lieutenant, but we weren't commissioned yet. While we were there, we weren't quite through with the 30 days, and the outfit we were with pulled out. We went to Guadalcanal. So there we were, 3 of us, left out there in the woods, and for about 2 days. Well, we scrounged around, got something to eat, and we had a place to sleep, but everything else was gone. They came finally and picked us up and took us back to this officer candidate school where it was, and we were commissioned. I was commissioned on October the 20th, 1942. So, now I'm a second lieutenant, and I was sent to another outfit. Left all my friends and went to another outfit, which was kind of bad. We didn't stay around very long. Decided that we were going to ship out, and we went down to Nemea, and we got on the naval ship, USS President Adams, on the 21st of November. Well, we didn't leave until the 5th of December because there was so much naval action going on up here in the Solomon Islands that we couldn't go up there yet. We were here, and we had to go up to there. So we stayed in the harbor, and I really lived like a king. I was used to, you know, eating with the other guys. You had to walk down a mess kit. Now we sat down at the table, and guys in white came and served us. And for Thanksgiving dinner, I had turkey and all the stuff that goes with this, and ice cream, and even a movie afterwards. So I wasn't quite used to that, but I didn't frown too much about it. Well, we finally moved out and started for Guadalcanal. I'll tell you what happened. This was held by the Japs up until August. Now, August of 1942, the Marines landed there and fought and gained a beachhead. You see some pictures in there where, I think it's right here, they got terrible malaria and they were just about did them in, but they gained a beachhead, and then the Army moved in to further take over the island. So that was our job. And I never forget when we approached the shores, how you could smell that green vegetation. I don't know, it just hit you. We used to be out to sea, but we smelled all that green vegetation. Anyway, same thing happened. The ships were out 2 miles, and they sent all the food in, and we worked like mad for 2 days to unload that ship. And talk about hot. Now see, here's the equator, right here. Well, here we were, right there. So just a little bit south of the equator. And every day in the afternoon it would rain. Just come up a thunder shower and storm and rain. And you know what it's like on a hot day after the rain. The humidity is about 110, and temperature is 110. Humidity has to be 100. Our clothes were sopping wet all the time. Just never would get dry. It was a mess. We landed just east of the Tenaroo River. One of these pictures up there shows that right there is where we landed. Right there, if you want to look at it pretty soon. The coconut, all the area was just coconut grove. And then we didn't stay there very long, about 2 days, and we moved up to the front. There's some names, you know, they nicknamed the hills. We moved up to Bloody Knoll. That's nice, isn't it? And then we later went to Grassy Knoll. Well, on December the 19th, after an all-night artillery barrage, and that's an experience too. You hear those things going over your head and hope they go far enough and land up there ahead of you. We made contact with the Japs, and on December the 19th, 1942, I was wounded by a Japanese automatic rifle, I thought. See, we had what we called an automatic rifle. It had a magazine of 20 rounds, and you could shoot that 20 rounds all at once, or you could shoot it in bursts. Well, that's what this guy did. He shot in bursts. And I'll tell you something about the terrain. It was jungle. There were numerous trees that grew up high, but they just completely shaded the whole area, so it's kind of dusk in there. And then the undergrowth was all kinds of vegetation, vines, everything green growing, because naturally it rained every day, everything was green. So I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Now, when I got hit, you might say, oh my, did it hurt? Wasn't that awful painful? Well, I got hit in this portion of my forearm. There are two bones in your forearm, as you recall, the ulna and the radius. Well, naturally, I was holding a rifle like this, so you see what happened. It hit right here, hit that ulna dead center, and just blew out 2 inches of it, and a big hole. No bone. And it felt like somebody hit me with a sledgehammer. That's the way it felt. Just a terrible blow, and knocked me to the ground. And then he kept firing at me, the dirt flying at my face. Well, I wasn't too comfortable there. And I thought, well, am I bleeding? I couldn't see very well. I knew I was bleeding. But we're taught how to take care of that, of course. You can press on an artery here in your armpit, which I did to stop the blood. Fortunately, I didn't pass out. I didn't faint. So after a while, he quit firing at me. I don't know why. Either he couldn't see me, or I thought perhaps he was shooting from a bunker with a slit and he couldn't quite get over far enough. Anyway, he didn't hit me anymore. And he quit, and I thought, well, now it's now or never. I got to get out of here. So we had been coming up a hill. I mean, this part was pretty steep. So I moved back quickly, about 50 feet or so, 50 or 100 maybe, down in a depression, so I knew that I would be relatively safe there. And we carried, here's a belt that you carry. Of course, you have several things. You got a canteen on there, and you have some ammunition, a little bit, and you have a first aid packet. Well, some other soldier came up to me, and I said, well, get that packet on my belt. And he got it out and put it on my arm, and he says, it's not big enough. There's a big compress, but it's big enough. But anyway, he put it on there, and didn't have any difficulty. Fortunately, I had a compass. I knew which direction we'd come. So you know, if you just turn around, go back, 180 degrees, I had to go back where we came from. Of course, you couldn't see, you didn't know where you were. So I was able to get back to this aid station for first aid. And another fortunate thing, there was a very new drug called sulfa drug, you know. With a white powder, and they pecked my arm full of that stuff and bandaged it all up, put it in a splint, and put me on a stretcher and carried me back 1.5 miles to where the road was, where there was an ambulance. Before I leave this scene, I want to tell you about what kind of fighters the Japs were. A lot of times they would, you know, they didn't seem to care about their lives. In fact, if they died while fighting for their country, well, that was a great thing for them. They felt that, well, they'd be sure to go to heaven then. They would perch themselves up in a tree where you couldn't see them, and then after you go by, then they'd either jump down or they'd shoot you, or sometimes they would be in a dugout place. They'd dig out a hole and cover it over with timbers and brush and leaves and everything, and you'd walk right by it. Then they'd get up behind you. Well, maybe they're sure to get killed, but they're going to get plenty of people with them before they do. They were tenacious fighters. They just didn't seem to care about their lives at all. Anyway, we're going with me. I got back to the ambulance and they took me back to the field hospital where they did surgery and dressed my arm and put it in a cast. I stayed there overnight until the next morning, and now we're going to start my long tour home. And you see how long it took for me to get home. I mean in Catlin, Illinois. On the 21st of December, 2 days afterwards, we flew on a DC-3 to a Navy Mobile Hospital number 2 in New Hebrides. New Hebrides was right in here. The Japs had been on there, but not very many of them, and they had chased them off, and there were 2 naval hospitals there. So I was there for about a week, I think. And then on the 31st of December, I boarded a hospital ship. On January 1st, 43, I'm going to get some water. I'm talking too loud.
Charles, while you're getting a drink of water, when you were taken back to that first aid station, wasn't that where Sinclair was and told you you'd lose your arm?
Well, it just happened that there was not Sinclair, it was another doctor. When I went to the aid station, later on, the two doctors that took care of me worked for my outfit, of course. They knew me, and I saw them later on. And they told me, they said, I thought you'd never say that on. But I was fortunate. One reason I got back for real quick to get medical attention, and they had this sulfur product which stopped the infection. So I was fortunate. So on the 1st of January, we got on this hospital ship. And first, this New Hebrides, 2 big islands on it. We were at the south one, we went up to the north one and picked up some more. Then we went to New Zealand, right there. Went down to Wellington, New Zealand, and stayed there. Got there on the 6th of January. And later we went to another naval hospital, which is down the south part of the island, Auckland. Of course, it didn't take them very long to figure out that my service was over with, and they might as well get me home, out of the way. And we got on I want to point out how lucky I was. On January the 18th, we went on a hospital train all night and arrived at 11 a.m. at this hospital at the south part in Auckland on the 19th. And at 5 p.m. that night, we boarded on a ship. The next morning, we took off. So I just barely caught that trip. And we went from here to San Francisco in 12 days. It took us 26 to get over there. We went back in 12. Why? Because we went unescorted. With a fast ship, they go faster than the sub, so they didn't have to fiddle around and zigzag and wait for slower ships. So I got into San Francisco Sunday morning, January the 31st, 1943. Well, the good old Red Cross notified my parents with a telegram. It said something like this: "Your son is wounded and is in San Francisco Letterman General Hospital." Well, my goodness, they didn't know whether my legs were blown off or whether I was half dead. And they were ready to jump in the car and drive out there. So before that happened, I called them. I was able to get to the telephone and call them and let them know that, no, I'm in good shape. All that's wrong with me is my arm. We didn't stay there very long. We left by train on the 5th of February, headed for Kennedy General Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. So you know where Memphis is. And it took us, I don't know how to get there. It seemed like 2 or 3 days. Well, it did, 4 days. We didn't arrive to Memphis until the 9th day of February. We arrived at Kennedy General, and that's going to be my home for the next 22 months. It took that long to fix me up. Well, of course, Mom and Dad and Mary and I were engaged at the time, came there right away and visited. And of course, I was able to walk around. My arm was in a cast. I didn't have very good clothes on because everything I had was lost. And on the hospital ship, they issued me a pair of marine pants. They don't have any pockets in the back, you know. I had no pockets, and an old field jacket and some old army shoes, and I didn't look too good, but I was able to get around anyway. Well, the folks went back, and Mary stayed, and it didn't take us long to get married. So we got married down there, and then she went back home. Well, any questions up to this point before I go on further?
You're just doing fine. Very interesting.
What?
I said you're just doing fine. It's
Oh,
very interesting.
okay. Well, all in all, I could say this, I guess. It's quite an experience. If you can get over there and get back, it's a great experience. I feel sorry for those who never made it back, but I saw things I never would have seen if I hadn't been in the service. Naturally, I met a lot of fine people. I thought it was interesting to see what the medical profession can do for you. Now, when I got them down to the hospital, my arm was in a cast, open wound. I'm going to say some things I hope it doesn't make some of you, some people can't take this sort of thing, but if you get sick, I'm sorry. See, when that hit the ulna, it blew out 2 inches of it, and a big hole. So there you had 2 ends of bones protruding just out in the open, because there's no flesh there. They couldn't do a thing until that wound halfway healed itself and be sure there was no infection. So in April, they told me, if you can go home and have a doctor to take care of you, we'll just send you home for 30 days. You might as well be homeless and be sitting around down here because we can't do a thing. So I said, well, fine. I went home, and you all know Dr. Koenig? I went to Dr. Koenig, I don't know how often, 2 or 3 times a week. He would dress my arm, and I know at the time he was just been here, not very long, and not very wealthy. And what's his wife's name? Lily. Lily made the dressing. She always made the dressing. Anyway, he dressed my arm for 30 days, and in the end, I wanted the bill, and he says, no charge. So, you see, he hadn't been over here too long. He'd gone through all this in Austria. They chased him out, what the Germans did. So he took care of me while I was home. And when we were ready to go back at the end of April or first part of May, whatever it was, Mary had been working at DuPont or Newport, and she transferred to a plant in Memphis. So we went back. And stayed in a hotel until we could find an apartment house. So my stay there wasn't as bad as you'd think. As long as I was in between surgery, I just liked going to work. I'd go to the hospital and spend the day, and she went to work, her job, and she'd come home, and I'd come home. And we had weekends off, and we toured everywhere in Memphis and had a good time. But I was tied up quite a bit of the time in the hospital. And I'll give you some of these dates and what they did.